I'm very pleased to be here and quite honored and very impressed to see how many people have volunteered to come and build understanding. It's really an amazing goal, I think, of the Human Library that it says, let's get together and let's build understanding among people. And you're ready to tell your stories and build understanding with anybody that's interested in listening. I do not present myself as an expert. I am a mediator and a trusted friend of Providence Community Library. And they came to me and said, Ellen, some of the things that may come up for people that volunteer are how do we react if somebody doesn't like our story or challenges our story, or something that they say in fact triggers an emotional response in us that we're not so comfortable with. So one of the things that I've done over the years is I used to go into schools a lot in Pawtucket, Central Falls, Providence, all over the state, and teach conflict resolution. So I pulled out my old binder and looked at the lessons for kindergartners, 6th graders. It's not really different. It doesn't matter how old a person is.
When you're talking about emotional issues, it could be 3, you know.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I pulled out those things, and then I thought, is conflict really the context? Should I come out and say, you know, I'm a mediator, therefore I want to talk to you about conflict? It's really about understanding as I see it. This is an opportunity for people to deepen understanding. And we can talk about what enhances understanding. I thought maybe that would be useful. And maybe what gets in the way, which is sometimes possible. And I thought it was important to, the first person that I met right there at the door, I introduced myself and he introduced himself, and he said, oh, conflict, he said, in my class, I teach that conflict is one of the things that's just natural and normal in life. And in fact, that is really the first lesson I think, not that I have to teach, but life has to teach, right? That there are going to be differences of opinion, and then differences of perspective, and Amy and Joyce, the organizers that I worked with, did a nice job orienting me very early in saying that their perspective is that, oh goodness, I'm a little nervous, so I just forgot what I was going to say. Because I am humbled by all of you and what you bring to the room. Okay, so we're talking about conflict. Oh, I know. And they were saying that because we have these different perspectives, it shouldn't be something we avoid. In fact, it's something we should embrace. So it's really, I'm really here to help draw from you, because you, I'm sure, have tons of strategies and ideas on what it takes to enhance understanding. And perhaps what are some of the challenges to building understanding and how we can strategize to address them. How does that sound for a start? Did you want to say something?
Just what I was hearing before about boundaries when that's set. I mean, to me, in terms of the books, if it's not messy or there's no conflict, it's not messy. So I would like to bracket the idea of niceness and sustain the conflict in a respectful way. Even encourage the conflict in a respectful way.
Yeah. And I think that everybody has to figure out what that level of comfort is, right? And I agree with you. I think that in order to build understanding, it is best. I started to write down a few things that I thought would be helpful. And first, it's to remember the goal of the day. I think that that's really important. That's what I do anyway before something that might be intimidating. So Ellen, so what is it that you're going to do, even though you might be a little intimidated by the level of conflict that I might be facing in a room? And I think building understanding is a really important thing. We're going in and we're going to build understanding. And I think that the committee did a really wonderful job in trying to structure the day in such a way to provide supports for building understanding, whether that's through some simple ground rules, whether that's through having people in the room available if you as a book or someone as a reader would like to take a break or just feels like they need a little bit of time alone, all those kinds of things. So I thought maybe one of the things that would be helpful is to ask you to turn to somebody and, well, think for a moment maybe to yourself about what are some of the things that you think will enhance understanding in a conversation. What are some of the behaviors that we can't control the other person, but what are some of the behaviors that we have?
Because I'm confused on what's going to happen in that 20 minutes. Am I going to start talking about, when I was 3 years old, are they going to start asking me questions? Is there a protocol that you have in mind? Because you said they may ask questions, she said. They may ask questions. Well, what else is going to happen if they don't ask questions?
Okay.
Am I going to come in with a prepared script,
You don't have to have a
So
prepared
what
script.
do you think is going to happen?
Can I just say, we're going to have a special training for the book starting in a few minutes.
Well, I understand that, but I'm thinking about what would enhance
A few words on that,
understanding.
I would guess, is probably a good thing.
because understanding
Right
happens
now.
in a dynamic interaction. I mean, I've had people say, she's so ugly. That's a different response from saying, I bet it was difficult growing up like that. I mean, it's what's going to happen there, and that's how you either punch him or you leave. What enhances conversation, whatever we're talking about is when you know somebody else's story, the diversity has left. Once you see things in common, once you hear another person's story, it's hard to bomb them, So how is the 20 minutes going to have them know my story?
Okay, hold on a minute. Could you quickly answer that question? So that might help, actually. There are others that I saw shaking their heads.
Okay.
Or nodding. Are they nodding or shaking?
Oh,
Yeah, nodding. Yes, we have the same question. All right, go ahead.
Excuse me, I was just stuffing my face back there, so that's why it took me a second. The conversation, it's a conversation, and there isn't a structure. There will be icebreaker questions in the program, so that the patron can initiate a conversation.
Okay.
But you may get a really nervous patron, in which case you need to initiate the conversation. And you do that,
You might say, why did you check me out?
yeah, that's fine. But like, we don't have a script.
What did you want to know?
This is an organic experience, right? Every single patron is bringing their own stuff to the table. So for us to give you certain lines to say doesn't really work because everybody's different. But what will happen is you'll have a go-getter patron who will walk right up and come in, who's read your description and has like a bunch of questions for you. Then you're going to have someone who's reading right off of the program, which one of the questions is, what made you decide to be a book? And or it might just happen organically. You're going to be walking up the stairs with a docent. You're going to be introducing yourselves to each other, and something very natural may come out. Like they say, oh, I'm from Woonsocket, and you might say, hey, I'm from Woonsocket, and then the conversation just happens. So there isn't a script. And as much as we would love to make all of you comfortable by saying that there is,
that would make me comfortable.
Oh, okay, then you're free. That's good.
If there was a structure or if not a structure.
And those particular questions could be written up, just like the prompts that you've written up for the readers.
Sure.
A few of those could be written up and posted in that room, like,
Exactly.
why did you
Use the
check me
whiteboard
out?
that way.
Couple of
And
those
if you
things.
guys, as you're talking to people, find that you've found some good ways, we'll leave markers in there, and you can leave notes to each other about something that worked really well. But in this case, what I think Ellen's talking about is just what breeds understanding in general, and not necessarily, I think, these particular conversations.
I do mean in these conversations, because I think it's helpful if we try to apply it. But you know what? Instead of getting into small pairs, I'm looking at the time, maybe we can just hear a couple of suggestions on what do you think would be things that would enhance understanding when you come that day on the 3rd. Sure. So 1, 2, 3. Yeah.
modeled the behavior very well, because you were confronted with a question that was off the topic, that may have caught you by surprise. And rather than shutting the person down, you honored the person, you honored the question, you validated it by answering it and integrating it into the discussion. And I think that's always key. Listen, honor what the person is saying, validate it, and who can resist that?
Okay, I'll try to repeat it. And then someone here has said, in the future, if people can stand, then others can hear. So you said, listen, validate what they're saying, try to be flexible and respond to what they're saying. And was there another thing you said?
Well, no, I just value what the person said. And what I really wanted to point out is I think you modeled it very, very well in that particular situation.
Okay, great, thanks. I forget. Yeah,
Hi, I was thinking to illustrate my book and to bring photographs of my family and the different situations I'll be talking about.
great.
What a good idea, Aoi.
Wonderful. Yes.
Well, just to emphasize on what you said, I think you need to listen, understand, and reflect on what the person is talking about. And that should be multidimensional, both the book and the petrol.
Listening going on both ways and trying to understand.
And that will yield respect.
And respect. Thank you. Yes.
Body language.
Okay. So what enhances understanding? Open body language as much as possible.
There's more said through nonverbal than there is verbal.
Okay, great. Yes.
I think one good rule is to sort of speak about your own experience, because nobody can say, oh no, you didn't have that experience, you just imagined that. So I think sort of like keeping, using the word I, and this is what my experience was, is a good way to kind of preempt any, or enhance, that's one way to
Enhance the conversation, yes. Yeah, I think that is very important. As much as we can say, I believe, or I think, or I feel, then that's very important. I work with a lot of academics, and one of the things that I try to do in my ground rules with academics especially is that they tend, I shouldn't use that
Active voice.
but
as
some
opposed
people
to
like to
passive.
say, we all know, and it is the fact that, but if it's really I believe, it really leaves the person to be less defensive often from what you said. So there have been other hands, yeah.
Another concept that I think is important is that this is on the idea of taking out a book, not just grabbing a person and talking to a person, but learning from a book. And just as most people won't offend a book that they've taken, especially if it's not their own, if it belongs to someplace else. So the concept is that this person is yours to borrow, to learn from. If you don't like what you're hearing, you can take it back. But you don't attack it, because you wouldn't attack somebody else's book. And you shouldn't attack, beyond the point that you shouldn't attack a person. This is not the same as like taking a person out for a drink to talk to. It's a different format.
Yeah, and I think that's why some of those ground rules that they created are very good too, because it talks about respect and it talks about too. I think it's very important to try to be flexible and to expect that there might be some high emotions and try to accept those and work through them. But if you are uncomfortable, then there's nothing wrong with saying, I need a break. And reaching out to the circulation desk. I don't know if you call it that exactly, but reaching out to one of the volunteers or staff.
Actually, you will reach out to the big green librarians. We will help you.
And
people on the floor to help you that way.
And I was thinking really that a graceful way of doing that perhaps would be just to say, if you become uncomfortable, I need to take a break for a moment. Excuse me, I need to take a break. And can we come back in 5 minutes? And in that 5 minutes, it might be enough time for you to just have paused, or to reach for some kind of help or whatever, but it's also not just leaving someone flat. Can we come back in 5 minutes? And then either you go back to that person in 5 minutes or somebody else will go back. Because it may have been you that needs, yeah.
A lot of the books that I've loved in my life, I don't pretend to have understood. So I'd like to bracket that word understanding for a second.
Could you stand up, please?
Yeah, just to bracket the word understanding for me and just suggest receptivity, you know, to feel our way into the situation. Because understanding might or might not happen. And it might be overrated, you know. It's just intellectualized. So just to feel it, like music, you know, in a conversation for X minutes. Just that thought about being receptive to it and helping that happen.
Yeah, because listening, you said in the back, listening for us is going to be just as important as speaking. What do they want?
Yes.
She had a question before my question.
A lot of people,
People kind of, I was waiting, but people kind of said what I was going to say.
okay.
How y'all?
When there's misunderstanding especially, but anytime we're trying to facilitate communication or understanding, we can question the reader as well as they are questioning us. That we are always able to say to them, what led you to that conclusion? Or why do you feel that way about what I'm saying? Or, you know, how did you come to this point when you know so little of my story? And try to ask them questions that might lead to better communication. That's always an option. I think that's always open.
And we can always ask too, are you comfortable telling me how you came to that?
Because we are.
Because they have an option.
We are
They
as
might
open to
just
asking
want to
questions
listen.
as they are.
Yeah, they might just want to listen. So that's one of the things I've learned to say as a mediator. Do you want to respond to that, or do you want to say more about that? Because they may or may not. Yeah, good point.
And this is not a competition. This is an open-ended, sharing conversation. There is no right or wrong, there just is. And we're really sharing energies with each other. And so the energy that we bring to it as a storyteller is a peaceful one and a calming voice where there's no judgment.
Yeah. I think those are very important things. Calm and non-judgmental, patient, accepting, yes.
Yes. One way to do that would be, I guess, to not assume automatically that there is a conflict just because there is some tension. Because a lot of conflicts are due to a perception of conflict rather than an actual conflict. You said something important about embracing conflict. I think conflict is, as you said, is part of life. That's what makes us grow and get to know each other. So perhaps it's just, would be one way to embrace the tension, not as a conflict, but as something natural.
I'm sitting here trying to imagine what conflicts would arise in this kind of a situation.
Well, I mean, conflict can just mean difference of opinion. Between two people, you have different opinions about a lot of things, different perspectives. So if you look at conflict as just a difference of ideas or opinions, a lot of people, when I used to be in schools, I'd say, what's conflict? Fight, 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 you know? Conflict can just mean difference. Yes?
I think that one thing that's important too when you're having any conversation is to know what you want to get out of the conversation, know what your goals are going into it, and having an understanding of what the other person might be expecting from you as well. That's just as important.
There was one little thing I wanted to read. Seek understanding without expecting agreement. I kind of like that. It goes back to some of what other people said. If you're not looking to really convert, you are not looking to convert, or to get agreement, to share, but to share something.
Yeah, some of us are can take a question as being a confrontation. Because some people, either it's about us or people's own questioning. And so I think that's a place where some of us might feel like we're being judged, and so I think there's this piece about checking ourselves, and it's okay to have silence in our response. It's okay to take 20 seconds and be, decide that this person, reframe ourselves and be able to answer this.
And it's very fine too, as Amy said earlier, just to say, I'm not comfortable answering that question. Thanks for asking, but I'm not comfortable.
And sometimes the same question, just a different tone of voice. And I work with a lot of people, and I've watched that happen a lot. So just knowing yourself and being aware of that.
Yes.
Quickly responding to that, I would hope that while one of us might be in that situation saying, I'm not comfortable answering this question, to ask why. Maybe in the course of the exchange with the other, we might become more comfortable with this question. Because if people leave the day feeling more conflicted than they went in, I feel like I've done my job. I mean, I think conflict in that sense is really friction. That's a sense of emotion, right? So if we're not comfortable answering a question, I think it's really important to know why. And bring to the table an openness to maybe be uncomfortable for 5 minutes and work with that.
Okay. Yes, I understand the
timekeeper.